Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about the President of the United States, none other than Donald J. Trump. Yes, Trump is the president, at least for now. By the time you're watching this video, we could have a different president. We could have the same president. Who knows? We'll see by the time it comes out. But for now, we're talking about something a little different. We're talking about a big thinker and major former famous atheist turned podcaster and soft-spoken political insider going by the name of Sam Harris. Sam Harris is a very smart guy, clearly. He's also very rich and successful. I've been a fan of the guy for many years. I loved his speeches, his performances. I used to watch clips of him and videos about him when the atheist movement was coming up about 5 to 8 years ago. That fad has kind of died down, but he's still kicking around. And what happened this week is rather interesting, rather funny, coming from someone like Sam Harris. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist. He's very smart. He writes books. He does speeches. He talks about God and hard, tough issues. He also discusses religion a lot. One of his main topics, one of the things a lot of the atheist videos talked about was the faith and talking about Christianity versus Judaism versus Islam and all these other groups. And the crazy thing that's come up today that you're not going to believe is that Sam Harris seems to have flipped the script and turned and become this sort of extreme political person. He's not using his common sense and facts and being unbiased like how he used to be. I mean, clearly he was probably liberal before, but with Trump coming around since 2016, it's pretty clear that Harris has gotten some Trump derangement syndrome. He's gone off his rocker about Trump a number of times, and today is no different. Today we're talking about a story from a few days ago where basically Sam Harris said that Osama bin Laden is less reprehensible than Trump. He essentially was saying that Trump is worse than this big famous terrorist who killed many, many people. This guy is crazy. Osama bin Laden was an extremist who not only organized the attack on America on 9/11, but also warred in the Middle East for many decades through many different lenses and situations and conflicts. He started conflicts, joined other ones, did many bad things, and he's obviously worse than Trump. But Sam Harris says that Trump is worse, which is pretty funny, pretty crazy. So we're going to talk about it more soon. I'm going to get into the details and talk about the article and some responses in a minute. But first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. An overwhelming 85% of Americans believe that at least one tech company is spying on them through the apps on their smartphone. This is exactly why I myself use a product like Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield prevents advertisers, corporations, and my ISP from keeping tabs on me while I'm at home. It's a VPN that was built from the ground up for privacy and protection, and it's the only one that I trust. And now you could get Virtual Shield for 50% off by going to my exclusive link at virtualshield.com/NoBS. Invest in your privacy because I highly recommend it. That's why I say you should get Virtual Shield today. Thanks for your time, and now back to the show. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's get into this article. It says, Osama bin Laden is less reprehensible than Trump, claims rational atheist Sam Harris, who once described the terrorist as a moral hero in a very bad game. Sam Harris may not believe in gods, but if someone asked him to describe Satan, it can be safely said that he will draw a portrait of Donald Trump. So he clearly thinks Trump is the worst. He has this derangement. He doesn't realize he's going way too far with this. He's even angering a lot of his base. A lot of the comments responding to this were very, very bad against Sam, showing that he went too far a little bit. He tried to do this big brain move. This happens a lot with these smart people, not typically someone like Sam Harris, but I've seen a lot of like wannabe smart people on Twitter, on YouTube, and they try to come to these weird conclusions and they stick on it. They stand their ground and double down because they think saying something different and odd makes them smart. They think taking some weird stance on, say, political issues or sexuality, they say something weird like people should be able to sleep with animals. That's something that Cenk Uygur said on TYT, and he stood by that and thought that was smart in a big brain moment. And I think that's kind of comparable to what Sam Harris is doing here. He's typically a smart guy, but there's certain things, certain instances, certain figures like Trump that divide people and also just kind of lower people's IQ and make them think these crazy things, which are obviously not true. I mean, for the record, before we even move forward, I mean, Trump hasn't killed anyone. Trump hasn't started any wars. He hasn't ordered any big operations that we know about. I'm sure there's been some covert ones and some little things happening, but they were obviously going to be up to snuff. They're going to be official and sanctioned and being done against bad people who are attacking our country. So even those small numbers, though, don't compare to Osama bin Laden, which if you just pin the 9/11 attacks on him, that's thousands of people dead. Trump hasn't killed thousands, but the thing is, you got to remember, these guys are deranged. These guys are off their rockers. And also, they already pin a lot of deaths on Trump. Like, for example, they blame all the COVID deaths on Trump. There's about 200,000 of those in America. They blame those specifically on Trump, even though that's totally absurd. He's not going out infecting people. Trump isn't killing people. Trump isn't filling nursing homes with infected people like, say, Governor Cuomo, who did that in New York. That's the worst hit state of this whole pandemic. And somehow Trump gets blamed for those deaths, even though they're coming from the governors and the local state officials, or sometimes, most times, they're uncontrollable. This is a disease that's wild and uncontrollable and just crazy. And maybe you could have done something a little bit different. There's always a chance to respond a little bit differently, but we already had the best case scenario according to the CDC. We're already implementing all the strategies that anyone can think of. Not even Biden has listed anything that's different that they would do on the left wing side to change this. They just say, oh, it's Trump's fault, we would do better. They keep it vague and silly like that. Sam Harris, renowned as one of the leading intellectuals of the new atheist movement and a self-professed rationalist, said during the 30th of October 2020 edition of his Making Sense podcast that notorious Islamic terrorist Osama bin Laden appears less reprehensible to him than U.S. President Donald Trump. The section of the podcast where he said it is available only to subscribers and was shared by a popular political commentator, Mike Cernovich. This is the tweet. This is where I first found out about it too. Here Cernovich says, Osama bin Laden is far less reprehensible to me than Trump. This is a quote from Sam Harris. This is a clip from the podcast. I guess we could check out the clip in a moment, but right out the gate, this looks really bad. This is not what you should be saying. This is someone that talked themselves into a corner. This is, again, someone who's want to be smart too, like we we're saying. I mean, Sam Harris actually is smart, but doing something like this, like going this far, is like a real big brain move is what I'd call it.
But Osama bin Laden is, as a person, is far more understandable to me and far less reprehensible personally, psychologically, than Trump. And
I think the way people, and this is just a guess, because...
So that's a clip, and I'm sure there is like a bigger podcast, there's some kind of context, and that was what Sam Harris's initial response was. He said you took it out of context or something, but there's really nothing that changes what he said. He really does think Osama bin Laden is less reprehensible than Trump. Osama bin Laden killed thousands of people, but Trump is bad. Osama bin Laden has believed in these violent ideologies that have spread throughout the globe, but Trump is worse. It's a really, really crazy thing to say, considering what we know and how Trump has not killed anyone, how Trump has ended wars, not started them, how Trump has strong moral, cultural convictions. He has loyalty to America. He's a Christian person with a very loving, very devoted family. It's just insane. I don't know where it goes, but I think we need to read on before we can even address it. In the audio clip shared by Cernovich, Sam Harris can be heard saying, Osama bin Laden as a person is far more understandable to me and far less reprehensible personally, psychologically, than Trump. The entire context of the conversation is not yet known, but that is not entirely necessary, as the atheist has said the same thing in the past as well. In an audio clip uploaded on his Facebook account on the 19th of February, he explains his position in detail. Harris says, I find Trump more despicable than I found Osama bin Laden. With Osama bin Laden, it's just obvious to me that he could have been a mensch in some sense, right? He's making serious sacrifices for ideas that he deeply believes in. He's committed to a cause greater than himself. This is obviously something he said before. This is another instance of him comparing Trump to bin Laden, which is crazy. We're talking about a worldwide renowned terrorist, one of the America's most wanted, versus Trump, who never broke a law, who hasn't been caught doing anything wrong, the most investigated candidate and now president in history, but somehow he's worse than a terrorist because Sam Harris doesn't know what he believes or something. It's just wow. The deluded atheist continued, I don't doubt he had real ethical connections to the people in his life that he cared about. He's a real person, right? And in some ways he is kind of a moral hero in a very bad game. And so therefore he's kind of prototypical even when viewed from my game. He's a person of actual substance. He's just committed to the wrong ends, whereas Trump is the negation of all those things. It is bizarre for Sam Harris to claim that Donald Trump doesn't have real ethical connections with the people in his life. It only reveals the extent of dehumanization dehumanization of Trump that dominates liberal discourse in the US. Liberals appear to genuinely believe that Trump is not even human and is not a real person in some sense. And I could see that. You could see where that's going. You could see the influence here. You could see them kind of buying into the idea that Trump is just pure evil. He's not even a person. He's been dehumanized so much, you could just take him down to the lowest level and not even think twice about it. And I think also the bad part is with Sam Harris, he's got this smart guy attitude and he tries to throw these big boy words around. But what happens is, well, the problem is he doesn't understand Trump, because Trump isn't all psychological. He's not all about just overthinking and being about your mind and just all in your head. That's how a lot of these psychologist kind of people are. These smarty pants people think everything has to be explained. But in the real world, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of biases. There's a lot of other things. There's this X factor sometimes too. And that's hard to explain to someone who's such a scientific, clinical person like Harris. It's thus quite clear that peak rational atheist Sam Harris believes that Donald Trump, under whose administration historic peace deals were signed between sworn enemies in the Middle East, is more reprehensible than an Islamic terrorist who brought down the Twin Towers and unleashed death, destruction, and carnage across the world. Yeah, that's what we were getting at too. I was saying that he hasn't started wars, he's ended wars. He's also brokered peace deals in the Middle East. He's brokered peace deals with Israel and multiple countries. This is something that Sam Harris should be behind too. He's a Jewish person living in America, profiting off of our capitalist city and our success and our great economy and stuff like that. He should be supporting a pro-Israel president like Trump. Instead, he's going pro-Biden and Democrats who hate the Jewish people, who attack them, who belittle them, treat them like puppets like they do other groups, and also they don't like Israel because they're racist. The dehumanization of Donald Trump has subsequently been used as a justification to justify all sorts of brutality against his supporters. Sam Harris surely does not personally endorse physical assault on Trump supporters, but it has to be acknowledged that he engages in the same dehumanizing rhetoric that has led to an epidemic of attacks on Trump supporters. So this is something that's coming from his rhetoric. He's actually pushing forward on violent things and causing people to attack these groups and think that Trump is worse than bin Laden, because if you tell people Trump is worse than bin Laden, then that justifies other people hating him and maybe even causing harm or something even worse. That's really bad. And the other thing worth mentioning is there was a follow-up to this. It says, Sam Harris defends his crazy Osama bin Laden comment, claims his remark was understandable in context. And this is just the part where we're saying where if you don't like me or respect my audience, but why would you attempt to mislead your own audience? Anyone can understand what I was saying in context, but I don't think so. I don't think the context really changes it unless there's something where you say Trump is not as bad as Osama bin Laden. Trump is not a murderer and not a fearmonger and an evil person like a villain. Unless you say that and then have this kind of thought experiment, I don't really see it getting fixed. I think this is just him playing it cool, trying to pretend there's something else going on when there's really not much else there. That about wraps things up. Comment your thoughts below. Tell me what you think about this video, Sam Harris, who you think is worse, Trump or bin Laden, and also hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw. Until next time, have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow.